All right, so Johannesburg City Power says it will no longer respond to calls from non-paying customers. This comes as the electricity distributor battles to safeguard the already vulnerable grid from collapsing due to rolling blackouts. City Power says those who bypass the meters will also not be spared. The utility says it's written to residents of Naturena in the south of Johannesburg, giving them up until Friday to respond. It comes after many refused technicians access to audit and install new smart meters within their homes. For more on this, we're going to be joined via Zoom by City Power spokesperson Isaac Mangena. Isaac, good afternoon. Thanks for your time here on the SABC.
Good afternoon, and good afternoon to the viewers at home.
Isaac, the decision to no longer respond to outage calls from customers who continue to refuse to pay for electricity and so forth. Perhaps you could talk to us about that.
So basically, as you rightfully are aware, the City of Johannesburg is basically in the red in terms of its revenue collection, and City Power is the main contributor of revenue within the City of Johannesburg. And as such, if we are not collecting revenue, we may find ourselves basically without jobs or without any services that are given to the residents of the City of Johannesburg. So it's not something new, basically, but we are just emphasizing what should really have happened even in the past, that we are not going to respond. We shouldn't have responded even to the resident outage calls who are not really supporting the city in terms of ensuring that we sustain the service that we are providing of electricity. So what we are saying is that we're no longer going to respond to any calls outages. Before we do that, we will basically demand to access the meters and audit those meters to see that they are vending. The owners of those meters are basically paying for electricity before we can respond. And that's basically what we're going to do. We're looking at those that have actually bypassed the meters and those that whose meters are basically no longer connected to the network, so that we can be able to assist in terms of fixing those meters, installing new meters if someone has faulty meter, and be able to ensure that we collect revenue at the end of the month.
Okay, Isaac, there must be a host of contributing factors leading up to this point. As we look at the issue of power for the city at large, perhaps you could talk to us about the demand experienced by the city currently and how you're working to supply to meet the supply.
So currently, as things are, it's not sustainable for us, especially because of the cost that we are incurring due to load shedding. So load shedding has actually put a dent into our pocket in terms of what we are supposed to be collecting. We're losing about 3.6 million on a daily basis as long as there's load shedding. And as you know, this year it has been sustained 100% over, I think. We had more days without electricity. It means that we have lost that 3.6 million since January until currently. So that is the money that the city does not have. And how do we actually recover that kind of money? We need to recover that money through the services that we provide to the residents of the City of Johannesburg. We need to ensure that when there are outages, currently, as I'm talking to you, we're dealing with about 3,500 at least outages across the City of Johannesburg. Majority of those are in Roodepoort. In Roodepoort, at some point, we had to replace at least 9 mini substations in less than a week. That is, one mini substation is about 600,000 rand. So you can imagine how much money we're basically losing in terms of infrastructure or material that we are supposed to buy. We're losing cables almost on a daily basis. We keep on issuing statements about the cables that we are losing, especially during load shedding as well. But remember, when there is load shedding, it means that we need to double up the efforts. We need to ensure that when there was one person dealing with the switching on and off, we basically have about 2 or 3 of those. So we've got more human resources on the ground. We have to pay some, recalling them from leave so that they can also be able to respond to these higher stages of load shedding.
Yeah.
So it's really, something that we really need to do to ensure that we've got this money. We have to do maintenance. Currently, you're talking about Eskom. Most of the issues, the problems that why Eskom is where it is now, have already been communicated as lack of maintenance over time. So you don't want a situation where you'll come back and City Power has not been able to maintain its infrastructure because of their people who are not paid.
So Isaac, with City Power saying it's no longer responding to calls from non-paying customers, what programs are then in place to assist those who simply can't afford to pay?
Look, that's a good question. Look, there are programs at the city of Johannesburg that assist the people that are not able to pay. I think the city came out strongly, especially after COVID-19, because we recognize the impact that COVID has had to our residents, especially the poor majority of the poor who currently are not even employed. And so we've got programs for the indigent customers, for the child-headed homes, where they can basically go to the city, any office of the city of Johannesburg in their region, and make their point clear and register there, so that we know who are the people that do not have the means to basically deal with it. But currently, we've got about 10 billion rand that is sitting out there, that we know that is owed by people that have not come forward to say we're not able to basically pay for this money. And that's why we have been basically upping our ante in terms of revenue collection, going around cutting off even businesses that owe the city of Johannesburg, to ensure that we recover all that money. And when I say businesses, the majority of these are people that actually can afford to pay for these services. I think in your intro you mentioned the letter that we have written to the residents of Naturena. If you look at Naturena, even from far, that is an affluent suburb. That is a suburb that is bonded. They pay bonds every day. They've got DSTV that they pay every month without paying, but they are not willing to pay for the electricity. I mean, why is that? But then when there are outages, they are the first to basically bend the tires to toy or to even call and shout at City Power to say City Power is not responding, is not fixing, is not maintaining its infrastructure. But they fail to understand that for us to do that, we really need to collect each and every cent.
Isaac, in terms of, if you can hear me, with regards to the residents in Naturena not paying, perhaps you could walk us through what that letter entailed. What were the conditions that you set for the areas? How is it going to impact if the conditions are not met? Walk us through that.
So Naturena is one of those suburbs that we have been struggling to, recover revenue from. There is a few of the residents there, almost half of the residents, they are not paying for services. Another half is paying for services. The other half basically says, for us to be able to pay, we need a reliable supply of electricity. And they were not receiving that reliable supply because of the issues, including cable theft between agent of substation and Naturena. So for us, we said we will take out the cable from underground, because when it's underground, it's very closer to the criminals and it gets stolen every day. We invested money last month. We built an overhead line at 9 million rand. Before we did that, we had a meeting with the community to say, we will invest 9 million rand to build an overhead line. But before we switch it on, we want to normalize your meters. We want to ensure that your meters are basically buying electricity. And they agreed to that. But when our teams from metering went in a few weeks ago, they were rejected by the community. So we decided not to switch on the line that we have built, but also to write them a letter to give them this week to say, if you are not coming forward, individually or collectively, to say this is how we're going to support City Power in its work in Naturena, then from the 12th of May, we're not going to respond to any outage calls coming from Naturena until we've actually agreed that we will have to come through, install smart meters, and ensure that people are billed and revenue is collected in the area.
Okay, thank you for that update. Perhaps you could also, just on the back of the challenges that you've now cited earlier on, with the increase in load shedding, some areas in the city experiencing technical difficulties leading to delays in restoration. How are you assisting in such instances? And when there are complaints about delays in technicians being sent, how do you respond to those sentiments as well?
So we woke up this morning dealing with about 3,500 calls, and most of those calls happened yesterday. You remember the inclement weather with the rains and cold yesterday. So it meant that, compounded by load shedding, we are not able to basically keep up with the demand in terms of the capacity. So most of areas basically suffered from overloading because of more and more people were basically connected to the grid, trying to warm themselves and trying to basically ensure that they go by. So we've had those outages, especially in areas like Roodepoort, Rembek, and even Heft Hill, where we're still having outstanding outages. The backlog is huge. In Roodepoort alone, we've got about 1,000, over 1,000 outage calls that we have to respond to today. And I must say that this is really stretching our resources to the limit because of while we're still recovering from load shedding, higher stages of load shedding, we are basically forced by obviously weather and even the cold that is coming to ensure that we double up our efforts. However, we've got a plan, especially moving towards winter, to ensure that we're able to respond effectively and efficiently, that we are able to put and place operators in the service delivery center so that they are able to respond as quickly as possible. Another solution that we basically have, and we will be implementing it in a few weeks' time, is to basically ensure that we come up with the load shedding schedule that will suit, tailor-made for the residents of the city of Johannesburg. We're no longer going to rely on the ESCOM load shedding schedule. So with our schedule, we're looking at least, load shedding residents at least for 2 hours on every day, on a daily basis, not the 4 hours, 6 hours, or even 8 hours that our people are subjected to because of even ourselves. It means that our infrastructure, it was never meant to be switched on and off at regular intervals.
All right, Isaac, I think we are losing connection with you there. We cannot hear you any further, but you have spoken to some of the main issues. Thank you very much for your time.